I mentioned in the lecture on irony and in the other one on dramatic monologue, a primary theme of Browning's dramatic monologues is the desire of the speaker to advocate responsibility for some failure or some transgression. We see that very prominently in Porphyria's Lover, which is the poem I'm going to look at in a little bit of detail, where the speaker is trying basically to justify his murder. He'd say, "I didn't no, I didn't really do it in a way." We'll look at that in a bit. And the Duke in My Last Duchess seemingly trying to justify why he murdered the last Duchess. We can think of Andrea del Sarto sort of trying to justify why he's never become a great painter. Fra Lippo Lippi, the painter, trying to justify why he likes the flesh more than the spirit. That's part of the tension in these poems. But this is especially prominent in Porphyria's Lover, in ways that are quite interesting in terms of syntax and diction. So the speaker is saying, okay, Porphyria glides in. That's how she comes in. She glides into his house. Already there's a sense that he's trying to dehumanize her. She doesn't come in like a person. She doesn't step in. She glides in. So it's as if he's trying to remove himself from her humanity, her fleshliness, given what he's thinking about doing. And when she does come into the actual house, we learn that her form comes in. So she's already kind of a ghost-like figure for him. And then look at the language here. Okay, she takes off her hat. She lets the damp hair fall. And last she sat down by my side and called me. When no voice replied, she put my arm around her waist. When no voice replied, who talks like that? Clearly, it is this speaker's voice that would reply. It would be more expected for him to say, "I did not reply." But the I goes away. It's as if he's trying not only to remove her from a live, fleshy person, but just to remove his I entirely, as if there's no agent in the poem. She put my arm around her waist. There again, he is passive. He's not there in a way. He's not doing anything. She put my arm around her waist. Let's look at some other moments in the same strain. Okay. He says, okay, she's too weak for all of her heart's endeavor, not to have interest in other lovers. It seems he's like the Duke, right? She too weak for all her heart's endeavor to set its struggling passion free from pride, and vainer ties dissever, and give herself to me forever. Listen to that complicated syntax. She too weak for all her heart's endeavor to set its struggling passion free from pride, and vainer ties dissever, and give herself to me forever. So that awkward syntax, of course, suggests the awkwardness of this person's thoughts and feelings, but also it suggests again this desire to pull away from time. There's no I here, and there's no cause and effect here. She should want to be with me forever. In other words, she should not even be part of time. She should be like a ghost, someone who is not affected by time at all. And if you're not affected by time at all, again, there's no place for responsibility, because responsibility is based on causality. If I do this, then this follows. If I do this, then I must take responsibility for that which follows. So again, he's trying to remove himself from causality, time. But passion sometimes would prevail, nor could tonight's gay feast restrain a sudden thought of one so pale, for love of her all in vain. Again, the syntax is very difficult to sort out. Nor could tonight's gay feast restrain a sudden thought of one so pale. Who's one so pale? Well, it could be Porphyria. If she's pale, she's having that thought, meaning it's a kind of possessive. This is a thought of her, but also it could be a preposition. The thought is of him who is once so pale. So this is yet another moment where it's difficult to tell what's being implied, and yet again, because he refers to himself not as an I, but as one, he removes himself, his I agency, from the scene, and that, of course, is part of the confusion of the piece. Um, then, of course, when he actually does strangle her, he wraps her hair around her neck 3 times. No pain felt she. I'm quite sure she felt no pain. So that if she glides in, if she's a form, if she can possibly live forever, then of course she feels no pain. But obviously she does. But there's that removal again. And if she feels no pain, then he's not really murdered her, right? He's not really done anything. I'm quite sure she felt no pain. Of course, the fact that he says it twice suggests he's protesting too much. He's trying to convince himself that she felt no pain, when of course, obviously, she did. So, and now what happens? They sit together now for all eternity. And God has not said a word. So she's dead. We're sitting together, and we're still sitting together. We're outside of time, and God's not said anything. Meaning, obviously, what I've done isn't so bad, or God would have punished me. So it seems that this character is blind in a way that the character in My Last Duchess is not. The Duke seems, on some levels, to be quite aware of what he's doing. In other words, he's saying one thing, but he means something else. Whereas this character doesn't seem to have that distance. Of course not. He's in the middle of committing a terrible crime. But we see him building up to this crime by, again, creating a world in which he doesn't have to be responsible for his crime. She's responsible for the crime. And really, the crime isn't a crime anyway, because it doesn't really hurt. And there are no real consequences for it. So it seems that this character doesn't seem to be as aware of the motives behind his utterances as the Duke is. And part of it would be proximity. This is obviously a character who is very close to what he's doing. If we heard the Duke talking only a week or so after his henchman had killed the Duchess, he would probably be speaking in a much different way. So there's a closeness to the scene. There's not the cognitive distance like the Duke seems to possess. But also, this is clearly someone who's unhinged. This is a murderer. This is someone who kills a beloved in cold blood simply because she doesn't give him all the attention that he thinks he should receive. So here we see a character really kind of almost expressing psychosis, meaning he's almost lost his sense of reality. He's in this kind of hallucinatory haze where he's unable to sense the reality of the fleshly world. So this is a psychotic murderer, to use our kind of language. I don't think Browning would have used that word psychotic, but we might use it. So one way to think about the dramatic monologue is to think about the speaker's closeness to the act that is most intense. Obviously, the Bishop orders his tomb at St. Praxed. The speaker is very close to dying, and his mind seems to be wandering. So he's very close to that moment. So we see the language kind of unhinge at the end. So, all right, responsibility and characters attempting to escape it in some of the dramatic monologues of Robert Browning.